Are you looking to sharpen your budgeting skills? You're in the right place. Welcome to the Budget Couple Podcast, where we talk about life, family, and how to afford it. And now, the Budget Couple themselves, Nate and Danielle.
Welcome to the Budget Couple Podcast. I'm Nate.
And I'm Danielle.
And in this episode, we're going to return to some listener questions. We have a bunch to get through, and we really appreciate that. Before we dive into any questions, we really want to encourage you, first off, to visit our website and to ask us questions. So you can go to budgetcouple.com and click on the contact form, and we'll be able to answer any questions that you have there, and we will get back to you as we've been moving through our list here. If you haven't listened in a little while, we did have an issue with our contact form. So if you sent us an email in the last 3 or 4 months, we think, we don't really know how long it's been down, unfortunately. But if you've sent us something and we haven't responded, it's because we didn't get it. We fixed it. It's working. We've been getting plenty of things in. But if there's something we didn't answer, we didn't answer it just because we didn't physically receive it. And we apologize for that. Also, one other thing, if you could review our podcast on Apple Podcasts or your podcast player of choice, it really helps grow the show and bring new people to the show, which also helps bring in new questions, new content, and helps grow our community. We really appreciate it. And now let's go on with today's featured content.
So I'm going to start with a question about a couple that has actually just started budgeting. They're just getting into it, and they actually have a specific question on savings accounts. So I'll go ahead and read a portion of this. How do you separate savings? If you have $500 in car savings, $1,000 saved for a new heater, $40,000 saved for a house, and so on, how do you separate these savings without opening 16 different savings accounts? To me, being able to separate the savings is so helpful. The other option is to simply have all the money in one account and keep track of it in an Excel sheet. If you guys have any tips for managing the savings, it would be so helpful. So that's actually a really great question. And at first, when I first saw it, I'm like, well, I don't know. We simply have it all in one big chunk sum in one account, and we just separate it out in a spreadsheet, and that's how we keep track of it.
It's quite legitimately just a few lines. We have what our savings are and kind of what the total amount that's for savings, and then what each amount is for. And that's pretty much how we roll with that.
Yeah, we don't do a whole lot. And it might be because at this point in our lives right now, we're not really saving for anything in particular. We're more just trying to pay down our house. But it's maybe also not how our minds work as well. But it got me thinking, and I realized I didn't know a lot about this issue, and I hadn't really thought about it much. So I do thank you guys for the opportunity to think about it a little bit more. So there really is only two main options. There's you can have lots of different accounts, or you can just use a spreadsheet. But within those two options, there's some variations. So like I said, we choose to track on one spreadsheet and keep it in one account, but it is just preference. One slight variation on this could be to separate into broader categories. So you don't have, like you said, 16 some accounts. You could do maybe a house account if you're saving for a house. You could do your crash fund, that 3 to 6 months worth of savings. And then maybe you can have a separate one for smaller purchases like cars and heaters and other things like you mentioned. So that's one way to do it so you don't have lots of different accounts. It just allows you to categorize a little bit at least. One general comment I would make on this is don't have too many savings goals all at once. And maybe, again, this is how my mind works, but if you have 20 different goals, it's going to be really hard to focus. And it's also going to feel like you're not really making much progress, or it's at least going a lot slower. So, if you narrow it down to 3 to 5 goals initially, I feel like it also kind of helps you or forces you really to prioritize what your wants are and what your needs are, and can help you with your savings.
And one other thing, if you have a ton of bank accounts, depending on your bank, you could incur a lot of fees with those bank accounts, and you could also be missing out on things. For instance, when we were with Bank of America, if you had a certain amount in savings, you were able to go through and get free things, like free money orders, free checks, whatever they had at the different tiers. If we were to break down our savings into a bunch of different categories, we wouldn't have been able to meet those requirements, and we may have incurred some fees. So if it's easier for you to do that, that may be one way to go, but there are some hidden costs potentially in that if you need to.
Yeah, Nate makes a really good point. And one way to kind of combat this while still having it all separated is looking into some online savings accounts, or maybe brick and mortar, that allow you to do sort of like sub accounts. And this might mean having only one account with them, but they allow you to go in online and actually kind of use tabs essentially. So they allow you to choose savings goals and allot certain amounts of the money in your account to specific things like car, house, or whatever. So that's one way to do it. If you have a bank that allows you to kind of categorize your savings, that's a possibility. There's also other banks out there that allow you to have multiple accounts without any of the fees or issues that Nate was talking about. So they just make it easier, basically, for you to have multiple accounts with them and separate out your savings. So, I didn't do a ton of research on it, but there's several websites actually that have done a lot of research. And I would suggest going on to NerdWallet. They have reviews of several different savings accounts that are good for multiple savings and different goals.
And those will be linked in the show notes as well, so they'll be there. And just a sub note on NerdWallet, it's a website I really like. They do a really good job, and from what I've seen and what I've used them for, they're relatively unbiased in how they present their information. It's just the facts and what it is. Now, while reviews always have a little bit of a bias to them, the tools that they present and all that are just really top notch. I really like NerdWallet. We've linked to them a lot in the past on different calculators and things. It's a really good website for finding out financial information and for playing with numbers, which is what I usually use it for.
One other thing I'll note is I was actually just curious and I decided to check out. We have a Capital One savings account and I just decided to go on and see what was available on ours. I've actually never looked to see what they have when it comes to savings goals and tracking those or setting up multiple accounts.
No, as we said, we're Excel people and that's kind of where we live.
So, it had some really cool features. It allowed you to go in and choose goals, and you got to choose the account, and then you chose the category, and you could even put specific names on the savings goal. And then it even had a little calculator to tell you how long it would take you to reach your goal, essentially. So that's all well and good, but the one negative I saw on it was it only allowed you to choose goals that were higher than the amount in your account. So it's seeing as just like a strict savings. So in other words, we have $15,000 in our savings account, and that's our crash fund. So that's our, we don't touch, that's 3 to 6 months of expenses put away. So if I wanted to set up multiple goals within that account, I couldn't really do it with the way they have it set up, because I'd have to say, well, I want to save 20,000. And they tell me how long it'll take to get 5,000 more in my account. So not super helpful with what you guys are talking about, but it is just another way to do it if you have one account and want to kind of categorize the money a little bit. If you are the kind of person that struggles a little bit with wanting to pull from your savings prematurely or taking money out of it for things that it's not really meant for, one option is to consider a CD. And these typically have a higher interest rate than just a normal savings account because you choose the length of time that you're going to put your money in there. So you say, I want to put my money in this CD for a year, and they're going to give me X amount of interest for that time period. The downside is you can't really get your money out during that time period. So you have to be okay with letting your money sit there for a year or however long you choose. And there are differences. There's 3-month ones, there's 2-year ones. I think they even go as high as like 10 years, to be honest.
I'm not sure how high they go, but I do have personal experience with this. When I was actually in high school, my dad encouraged me to do a CD with my money because it just literally sat in my savings/checking account, which I never used because I didn't have a car. I didn't have any real cost. I think my biggest cost up until I was 21 was a $200 Xbox. I think that was my biggest cost at that point. So I was a 10,000-aire by the time I was 18, and I didn't have anything to do with that money. So my dad encouraged me to put it into a CD. I was able to earn 5% interest on it over the course of 1 year. Now, interest rates are not like they were when I was that age. They're significantly lower now, but it was an easy way for me to earn money. While I wasn't doing anything with that money, it worked for me, and the bank obviously made money on it as well. So it worked out for everybody, and it's a guaranteed return on your money, which is another big piece of the CD. It's not like the stock market or anything else. This is money that's guaranteed to come back to you as long as you don't touch it for that time period.
Yeah, so it does two things really for you. It kind of forces you not to touch that money for a while and not use it prematurely or on something that you don't want to. And it also gives you a slightly higher interest rate than if it were just sitting in a checking account or a savings account. So it might be an option. It's something to look into at least.
Just do not do this with money that you may need during that time period. If you know you're going to be buying a house in the next year, don't put that $40,000 you have saved up for your home into a CD, because it's money you can't touch. And if you do touch it, you're going to lose your interest rate, and you're also going to incur penalties. So it's money that you know that you're saving longer term that you're not going to touch. So if your goal is to buy a house in 3 years, go ahead and throw $40,000 into a CD, lock it up for a year. You can't spend it. It's going to earn interest for you, and then you're ready to go.
Yep, absolutely. The final thing I'll say about saving, I would also suggest finding a way to make it automatic. So set it up so that money is taken straight out of your checking at a specific time each month. And that can be whenever you pay all of your bills, or it can be right after you get your paycheck, or whatever it is. But really try and make it so you have a specific amount of money coming out of your checking every single month and going into either one savings account, or if you want to split it up, have a certain amount going into each of those. That'll really help you grow those savings accounts instead of you trying to remember or physically put the money in each month.
Absolutely. And I think we're going to change gears here now. We're going to move totally off of the budgeting aspects of things and move into cord cutting, which is an episode we did a little bit of a while ago. And we got a response to that I just wanted to touch on because we want to make sure we get back to everybody who leaves us a comment. So listener Kevin said that he heard our podcast stating that we had some technical issues with using OTA, or over-the-air antenna method. He asked if we went through and tried putting the antenna on our chimney, or tried getting it to a higher location, or what type of antenna we used. And honestly, I think the antenna that we used was the cheapest one they had on Amazon that had the best reviews, because that's generally how I live with things on Amazon. What has the highest quality for the best reviews and for the lowest money. That's where we go at. But we went through and he had some suggestions on different models of antenna to look at, and also a resource called TV Fool, which helps you figure out what stations you can get in your area. And that's a website I've actually used before when we were looking at this. I know people in our area use over-the-air antennas to get a signal. They can pull in roughly about 50 to 60 channels, and we're in an area where we have 2 metropolitan broadcasts. We have DC and Baltimore. We're about the same distance from both towers, so we pull in both broadcasts so we can have all of that. Our problem is we live on a hill. We're about a third to a halfway down the hill. There's a giant forest behind our house, which has tall trees, and all those things mean that we're not in the best location to receive signal. I really haven't thought about putting it on the chimney. I'm really intrigued by that idea, but I need to wait for the weather to clear. As I speak right now, there's still ice on the side of our house from the last, well, it was a bust of a winter storm.
Winter never ends here.
Yeah. We had the last winter event that we had is still there. So I would like to try that out. I have to be careful because the side where our chimney is, we also have solar panels on. So I can't access the roof at all because solar panels. So I have to be a little bit more careful with that and figure out how I want to do that. I also have to decide if I want to permanently mount something to our chimney, if it's going to mess up with our solar panels, a whole bunch of other things. But I know that people in our area definitely receive more signals, and I would like to do that. The main reason I want to do over the air as opposed to what we do now is DirecTV Now. DirecTV Now costs $40 a month. It's going to be going up at some point. They keep hinting that it's going to go up, or at least the forums and places that I read keep hinting that it's going to go up, and they're also going to be cutting channels. So logic tells me that that's not going to be a great option for much longer. So the main reason we have that one is for local channels plus a couple of cable channels. If we could get all of our local channels over the air and be able to record them, which we have a solution for that, I could do that and then get our cable channels that we watch, which are very few. I could do something like Sling TV for $25 a month, and we'd be able to save a bit more money in the process. Is it game-changing saving money? No, but again, every little bit helps, and that's kind of where we want to be. The solution for recording that I'm looking at, just in case you're curious or going this route, we're looking at a Fire TV Recast. Basically, you plug your antenna into it. It will automatically program the channels and automatically record 2 or 4 stations at once, depending on what you do. And you can watch live TV on all your devices and all of that. It's really easy, apparently, from what I've read, and I'm looking forward to trying that at some point, but I need to get the antenna part of it working first. Danielle's giving me the look like I'm nerding out big time.
I have a lot of opinions on this. I'm very interested. I just, my throat hurts a little. I just can't.
Lies. This is just something I think is cool, and being a tech guy, somebody who just is interested in this stuff, I think it's super cool. So I apologize for those of you who have zero interest in this, for nerding out a bit. But Kevin, thank you for your question. I will let you know how it goes whenever I decide to brave the ladder and screw stuff into our chimney, which I'm a little bit terrified of, but we'll figure that out when we get there, and we'll see how it goes. But I am excited by the possibility of looking at stuff that's over the air. But Danielle, is that going to do it for us today?
I think so. Thank you guys for the questions, and we have a couple more left, but we're really looking forward to even more coming from you guys.
Yeah, so please send in any questions that you have. It can be budget related, it can be tech related, not really tech related, but budget and tech.
But he would love that.
Yeah, if you have tech questions, we can email privately and that's fine. But thank you guys for the questions. We really appreciate them. We appreciate all the reviews, and we appreciate you guys being part of the community and listening to us talk about budgeting stuff. Thanks so much again for listening. Visit our website at budgetcouple.com and click on our contact form if you have any questions. We'll see you next time. Thanks again.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Budget Couple Podcast with your hosts, Nate and Danielle. For more great content and to stay up to date, visit budgetcouple.com. Make sure to check out the next episode of the Budget Couple Podcast, where we'll talk more about life, family, and how to afford it. We'll catch you next time.